Hi again, it's Colin Seal, founder and CEO of thinkLaw, and we are here now looking at Lesson 4, the Chair and the Stick Part 2. So you might have already started Part 1, Lesson 3 as part of the same lesson, or you're doing this as two separate lessons. Either way, it's the same sort of breakdown in terms of the Common Core standards that align with this lesson. And the outline here is we're just going to review the standards of battery we went through in Lesson 3. We're looking at the open and shot case, and then we will look to the formal elements of battery as applied to the stick case and determine whether these defendants should get any sort of criminal charges for what they're faced with. We'll also have some fun activities in terms of ranking the relative evil of each of these defendants and kind of taking it from there. So one thing I didn't mention in the last lesson, but it's actually outlined in the text itself, is early on, you're going to be explaining to your students the difference between what a plaintiff is, a defendant, and what liable means. So that background vocabulary will be discussed prior to getting into this. When we're looking at the stick, again, we're looking at this concept of legal synthesis. We thought we understood battery because we knew the basic outline. We made up a pattern with Angel and Brianna, with one of them hitting the other person. We looked at this chair case and we said, okay, that's fine. We got pushed a little bit with this understanding of this bicycle case. And now we have a case that makes it a little bit different. Open and shot involves a guy who rigged the shotgun to his door to help prevent burglars from coming in there. And sure enough, somebody came in, opened up the door, and gets shot in the leg. Is that a battery? Again, intentional contact that's harmful offenses or causing damages. Not really an issue if it's harmful or offensive, not really an issue if it causes damages, but there are some issues of, well, is it the same kind of contact as just pulling out the chair on somebody or just hitting somebody? And it seems to be done on purpose, but maybe it's done for a reason, right? They're trying to protect their property. But it becomes an interesting discussion about what's more important, property or life. And quite honestly, I've seen this one think starter activity take an entire class period from time to time, which is one of the great reasons I think law is not meant to be a structured timing program, because sometimes you might be having a really great discussion and I don't want to push you to get through it because it's not the same as a regular class in terms of content that you're covering. Sometimes there's some value in going a little bit deeper on this. That said, if you go through open and shot in about 5 to 10 minutes, that should be fine as well and be a great segue into the stick case. Again, switching it up a little bit, because in a stick case, a man throws a stick and hits somebody in the eye, but he didn't mean to do it. He just meant to scare that kid maybe, or aim it at a different kid. So there's no intent. That ends up being the biggest issue when you're going through that analysis. But when we go through our draw plus C reasoning, which we spent a lot of time doing on its next page, although we don't call it that, we really start talking about the public policy here. Would it be fair to have a defense to say, well, I know I punched you in the face, but didn't actually mean to punch you. Oh, okay, you meant to punch that other person. Probably not. So, at some point, what some students and learners will start to develop is this idea of, well, maybe it doesn't matter that you purposely identified it somebody that you were going to hit, but if you hit somebody on purpose, or you made a purposeful action, you threw the stick on purpose, maybe that's the only intent that should matter. And whatever the outcome is what it is. And that's what the court ended up doing in this case as well. They looked at Mr. Smith and said, you know what? We're going to transfer your intent to the person you actually hurt, because what you did was bad to begin with. So what makes this interesting is looking at the nature of what happened here. In both Brian's case, who's a 5-year-old boy who pulled out the chair, and in this case with Mr. Smith, should any of them be charged criminally? And the difference here, in case participants have an issue understanding the difference, is it's one thing to pay money for damages that you make happen. But crime is something that actually involves you losing your freedom, right? You might go to prison, you might get locked up. So is there any difference in the way they might view it whether it's criminal versus civil. And that's where you might see people say, well, if you're only 5 years old and you're doing a silly prank like that, maybe you don't deserve to go to jail. But it does seem a little bit worse to have a grown man throwing a stick at kids that are just being a little bit mischievous. So, in any case, it's an interesting way to end off that lesson, kind of thinking more hypothetically about what ought to happen and how crime and punishment might work in a situation where people typically just sue each other. So that's basically wrapping up lesson 4. It's a way to just extend the concepts of battery that are introduced in lesson 3. So thank you for your time and stay tuned for lesson 5.